With basic modeling, it's pretty easy. We're looking at this dimension line. We can tab over to select the external wall face. This can now set a certain dimension like 5 feet. If we're wanting to copy it onto the other side symmetrically, we can go ahead and hit DM and then draw a line straight down. That'll instantly copy it. Now I noticed that my walls aren't aligned up, so all you'll have to do is type AL and select the first wall and the second, and now they're lined up. This will allow us to make the other side symmetrical with the windows as well. We'll select the two, DM, select the center, and now they're over on the other side. Now both symmetrical sides. Now we'll want to make our windows on the side of the wall. We'll go ahead and type WN for window and place this first one. We know we wanted to go across, but I don't know how much, so I'll put 8 as an adjustment level and make sure to hit unconstrain so that they can be separated. Once 8 is selected for our array type, I'll select the window. I know it's 3 feet. I'll add 4 to it and do 7. This will array the windows all the way down the wall, making it a little bit easier to where we don't have to place each one individually. Though, as you can see, the top part really isn't that leveled as the bottom, as the distance is a little bit further than what we want. We can go ahead and select that window and draw a dimension line between the two. Once this dimension line, we can see it's 5 feet, not our wanted 4 feet. So I'll go ahead and delete this constraint that is built with any array, so that is what keeps them grouped together. Once deleted, I can go ahead and ungroup them individually and change this parameter. I want the window to be set at 4 from the wall. So I'll go ahead and put the 4 in, and now this window is in place where I like it. Now I want to adjust each window individually. I want them equally spaced. Array usually does this, but since I already created changes to it, I wanted to make sure they're still equally spaced down the line. So if I draw a dimension all the way down, select everything and hit EQ, this will space out every single window the way that I like it. Now I want to make sure that 4 is still in place, as I want that to be a set dimension. And looking at the bottom, I'll also check to see if that 4 is still in place. And I like where it's at, so I'll go ahead and select it there. Now, if I wanted to ungroup that, let me go ahead and delete everything first and unconstrain so that everything can be adjustable. Selecting this, I can hit ungroup. This will allow me to change all of the parameters. But I have 8 windows. What if I want to change every single one of them and ungroup everything? I can select everything in the view and go up to filter and then check none, then check the model groups. This allows me to only get the model groups, and I can ungroup all of them. Now I can select that whole wall and check none again and do windows. This allows me to have every window on the wall. Now I can go ahead and mirror them to the other side. For mirroring, you want to be close to the center so that your mirror actually goes to where you want it, because it makes a complete reflection. Now, if I wanted to mirror these windows to the other side of the back half, I need a straight line as a guide. So I go ahead and draw a detailed line, which is DL, and I can select all of these windows and then hit DM and make a mirror across. Now my building is covered with windows. Now we want to look at making our 2D plans better. When doing this, we want to start to do typical techniques that we'd probably do in Illustrator. So let's go ahead and filter out all of our walls. And say that we want to change the thickness of these walls. Well, we can filter it, but if there's a wall on the inside, what do we do? Like if they're all the same type and we're wanting to change the exterior to look more like something real. The filter, if we select everything, it will still select that wall as just walls. It won't change the attributes of it. So instead, we have to go a different way to select all the same type of walls. What we'll have to do is zoom in to one of the existing walls that you want to change and select all instances. And then you can use visible in view or in an entire project. Once we do that, we have selection of all of those walls, and we can change them to a thicker wall. I'm just going to change it to a 12-inch masonry as something that I know is an exterior representation I can use. Now, as you can see, there's this texture over it that isn't really used in most of our drawings. Instead, we maybe want to do a poche around those or some way to eliminate that. Well, you can do override by element, which would change this single element. we can make it a solid on the cut line and do it as black. And that'll give us the poche that we're looking for, but it only changes that one wall. So instead we'll want to right click it and do by category for override. And then if we come down to the cut pattern, we can switch it to solid and then change that to black. Now if we hit OK and zoom out, we can see that we're starting to get a really nice dark poche around the whole project, even that wall that's different. And this is kind of the look that we're usually trying to go for. Now we can also do this another way by changing the material. The materials palette, we can set certain cut patterns in it so that every drawing that we're looking at will carry on these instances where we don't have to override the graphics every time. Now, if we click that, the only issue that comes up is it doesn't happen in the regular view, of course. Instead, we'll have to switch to fine or median. Sometimes this is good, sometimes this is bad. It depends on what you're needing. So I go back and forth of if I'm going to override it with graphics or if I override it by material choice. But now we want to make this drawing really pop. And usually shadows are something we try to give plans as a more of a 3D representation. If we click the bottom right and we come into graphic display, we can start to set shadows as a lighter shadow, as well as giving sun and ambient light. This will give us a really nice hue around our project. And it's really simple to do and only takes a couple seconds and everything starts to pop. Now let's look at elevations. We'll want to move this elevation down with MV to start give us a little bit more of a backdrop that we can work with. Now if we select it, it gives us the line that the elevation is happening on. If we click that line, we can start to double click it. We can see everything that is happening. It has a crop region around it. Now that crop region tells us what is inside the cropped view. There's two buttons at the bottom that will either uncrop the view or crop it, as well as show the crop region. Now, our topography does not look great. We can either override it by element and change the solid to black. This will be a quick fix for the drawing and is an easy way just to make it for whatever we want. We can also add any type of texture to it that we'd like. But for now, we'll do black and go ahead and set it as a nice poche, ones that we're usually used to adding to the project. But if you want to be a little playful, you can add concrete or any of the other textures that'll help you out. And then for more of diagrammatic or abstract drawings, we can even put a color on it and then give it a black background so that the poche is still there, but it has a little bit of a texture on it. Now, as we're pulled back, we can't really see it. And you're gonna have to go ahead and hit OK and then zoom in. And then you can start to see that pink really show up. So you'll have to adjust your settings to maybe make the scale a little bit bigger or to use a different pattern to really get that more of abstract look that you're going for. But I'm gonna set it back to solid view and change the color back to black as a poche and go ahead and OK. The next thing we wanna do is start making this drawing a little bit better. Go down to our visual styles and graphic display options again. Now what we'll want to do is go underneath shadows and turn on both cast shadows and cast ambient shadows. Next is depth cueing. We want to show the depth and lower down the distance. This is something that depends on the project. So you'll want to hit apply and then play with it. Give it a little bit more distance, give it a little bit more percentage until you get to a point that you like in the project. Now after you kind of get it to where you're really liking the way that it looks, we can start going into the background. Sky isn't really the great one. I choose gradient more often than sky just because I can have a little bit more control, but I hate the top blue that they give. So instead I set it to a lighter blue, and sometimes I change it to saturation, sometimes I don't. It kind of depends on if I'm what type of project I'm doing and what I really want the drawing to show. But now we start to get a really nice elevation already, and it's really looking almost to a final project. But these lines, these annoying lines in the doors, how do we get rid of them? So go ahead and select it and edit the family in the top. And then it'll take us into that family's Revit file. This is a completely different file. So we'll want to go into the elevation and then go to exterior. Now we can see those lines. Go ahead and select all 4 of them. And once we have them selected, we can go to the top and change the line weight to invisible line. They will still show in this, but if we hit load into project and then overwrite the existing version, it will be invisible in our project, and then we can close those, and you don't have to save because it's already overridden that. You can also make a duplicate to play it safe, but it's just different ways that I like to work, and I just keep those invisible immediately. And now we have this really nice elevation. But you want a section too, and how do you do that? So we'll go up into manage, and then once we're in the manage tab, or view, not manage, we'll go to section, and we can draw a section cut straight across. And we can also play with the amount of give that this has to. It's much like the elevation. All of these arrows kind of decide our scope. So if we bring them back to these reference buildings that I have in the back, we'll start to be able to see those and start to have those in our perspective. All right, once I have it where it's set, I can go ahead and double click that head, and then it takes me into the view. Now, as you can see, a lot of our textures aren't there again, and it's really annoying to have to go in and set it by element every single time. So instead, if we do it by material, we can come in and change the cut pattern of things. So let's go to default to set a actual cut pattern for each one of our layers so that we don't have to change it every time, and it's dependent on whether it's a roof, a wall, the topography, everything like that. So I'll name it topo, and it disappears because it's not starting with default. So I'll have to type in topo again, click that, and then always go into appearance and duplicate it. This is because this will, if you don't do that, you'll change the original generic default, and any changes that you make to it will change everything in the project that is linked to the generic default. Mostly this is just a linking system. So go ahead and apply. Let me go back to graphics and change the cut patterns to solid fill, and make sure that it's black or whatever you're looking. If you're looking for color, you can change those for 2. But remember, since we did that, we would have to change it to coarse. So there's another way we can do it. If we type VG, we can come in and type T for topography and override the cut pattern. So we don't have to stay in a fine or a coarse or medium graphic display. We can just go ahead and set this, and this will be an override already. Now, sometimes we'll want to stay in that medium or fine, other times we won't. It's just different ways and workflows that we can use in the project. But for this, as I don't have much of the walls distinguished with what's inside of them, I can use just the material settings, and it would make it a lot easier than going in and changing visual graphics every time. So let's go ahead and select the roof, go to edit type, edit, and then go to material. Now, we don't want to use the topo because we want to give it its own personal one. So we can just go ahead and right click and duplicate, and then we'll type in roof. Now, if we go to the cut pattern, it's already there because we already had it set for the topography. Now, I don't really need to change the appearance because I'm not doing much, but if I were to want to add a texture to it, then I'll change its appearance, and it'd make it a little bit easier. Let's go ahead and select the floor and do the exact same thing. And go into the 3 dots, and then go ahead and duplicate it, floor, and then we'll just go ahead and hit OK. And now we're starting to get those really nice pochette cuts that usually we do in Illustrator. And if we come into the graphic display, we'd have to set everything up that we just did. But why would we have to do that when we already have it here? So instead, let's come into our previous drawing and go at Save a View Template. This will save all of our settings we already have. So I like giving it like elevation settings or graphic displays, but all of these are check marks that we can carry over. If you want to keep the scale different, don't check it. If you want to keep just the background, then only check the background. If you want to keep just the depth cueing, only check that. This is mostly would be locked if you don't uncheck it, and that means that you won't be able to change it when you're in the section. So make sure to look at everything. Definitely the scale is the most important because you don't want to be stuck in a scale for all of your drawing. I mean, you'll want to change them if you want to do something diagrammatic or anything, but come down to View Template in the bottom left and select the elevational settings. And then uncheck whatever you don't want, check mark whatever you want, but it'll carry in everything that you chose. And now you're starting to have this really nice plan. But as you can see, our override on the topography didn't stay. At times, Revit gets finicky, and you'll just have to set it by object. You can select solid and then go to black, and then that's fine. But now you have a nice elevation. Now on to 3D representation. Now, we like the section as it is, but we'll probably want a section perspective. So go up to the top of view and add a camera. But we'll want the camera as straight as can be so that we can do a section perspective. So draw a detailed line, something straight down the site, pretty far so you can have it as a reference while you're setting up your camera, and make sure to extend it out a bit so you know that you're snapping to it. Now go to the 3D view camera, select the bottom, it won't snap, so you'll have to just do it by eye, and then go to the endpoint, and then go ahead and select it. This will set up your 3D view, but as you can see, it's not exactly how you want it, and it's not cut or anything like that. So go back to it, and let's delete that center line. And over to the right, we want to select that view. And we know that it's called 3D View 1. How do we know that? We know that from the list of tiles that we can find at the top that says 3D View 1, where our last view was. So let's go ahead and right click that and show camera. Once we do that, it will show the referencing camera and we can start to understand its boundaries. This triangle is everything that's in it and everything that's not. So select section box on the left-hand side so we can start doing a cutting plane of it. Now let's deselect and right click it again and show the section box. This is how we start making a cut. And all of this is our scope of view. So we can bring it up and then that will cut our building in half. And then we can start to pull it back as well so we can include those back buildings as part of background representation so we get some contextual. Right click again and show the camera. If we look at it over here while looking at the view, our camera is not great and we know that we need to pull it back. So right click it, show the camera, and then type MV. And then once we go ahead and move it back, we'll be able to pull some of that information back into the drawing. Move it to about halfway, and as you can see, the building is in that triangle. And let's extend that a triangle out to the back building so that we get our representation as well. And now this is starting to look pretty good. We do have that section box that we need to hide in our view because it gets annoying and it just kind of loads our drawing. So we'll go ahead and hide that element. And now we need to start setting up our references again. For the topography, go ahead and override the element and do it as a black cut line again as solid and then black. Luckily, everything else carried over. Though, one sad thing is we can't use our visibility graphics. So what we can use that is in here that's not a template is we can go up to shadows and cast ambiance. But we can't use depth cueing. So instead, we'll have to just deal with how it looks and go down to gradients. Again, use the gradient but our blue's not set. So if you want to set your blue for any type of drawing for the future or a color that you want, go ahead and go over to the left and select one of those white dots and then select the blue that you're wanting to look, desaturate it, do whatever you want. And then once you have something you like and that white box is selected, hit add. Now this is a color you can use in any of your drawings when coloring anything. So now we're getting it to where we like again. So let's go ahead and select our cropped view and pull up that bottom so we get to the post shape part. And then our top sky is a little high, so we'll go ahead and pull that down as well. Now that we've got kind of visual representation looking how we want, it still could use a couple things. A little bit of details that would help the section perspective pop. Something that I like doing is I like using Inkscape. Inkscape has an asset library that we can use that would provide the drawing with a bit more detail. So if we go up to Inkscape and asset library, which is free to download, we can go over to people. And then once we're in the people tab, we can grab any of these people and just select them. And then we can go ahead and drop them into our view. So we'll put her over here and hit escape. And then let's select her. And then we'll put her over here. And then let's get one more person. Let's get this guy and we'll put him just in the front to try to create like a perspective. So we'll go, if we hover over them, we'll see that there's a lot of black lines. Hit LW. And then we can select up by category and choose invisible line. Now hover over them and tab until you get a full blue object. You might have to click it a couple times as you're selecting each individual line, but now all of those black model lines are invisible. Now we can select it, right click and override by category, and let's change those parameters again. I like doing a solid with a blackish gray color, and then that kind of gets a really nice it doesn't pop out. You can also use halftone, and then it's just a representation on your drawing, and it doesn't take away from any of the walls or anything else. But you don't have to do that in plan. You can just hide them in plan and only do it in your section perspective or your sections. But let's hit LW again and go ahead and tab, and this can take a couple times. It can be 10 to 20 times. Sometimes I have to reselect a line or something until I finally get that full blue. Up there was, I finally get the blue that I'm looking for, and then that hides every single line for me instead of having to individually click every single line. And sometimes it's immediately. So let's select that, and we're going to override and do that blackish gray solid fill. I don't like doing a full black. I like having a little bit of gray into it. And then I also like adding some 20% transparency. It's just little things that I usually do in Illustrator, but making it in Revit just saves a little bit of time for me. So let's populate the scene with some furniture. So we can come over back to Inkscape Asset Library and go to Furniture. And let's scroll, and I don't think I like these chairs. Maybe this bench. So we go ahead and add the bench into our plan, set it up kind of where we want, and then we'll go ahead and put 3 of them. Yeah, this works. Let's exit out, go back to the section perspective. That middle one's a little off, so we'll go ahead and hit MV, move it to the center. All right, now that's starting to look nice. LW again, and we'll change all of the lines to invisible. It's just a good practice to do this so that there's not tons of line overload, and that all of them just turn invisible and they don't look like an imported object. Instead, they look like something that belongs there. Let's go back to our plan and let's get a little bit more decor in there. Let's go down to decorations. Let's see. Sometimes it takes some time to load. I like this leaf. Let's go ahead and put this leaf sculptor right here. Exit out. Let's go to section perspective. Wow, that is tiny. So go over to the left and edit the type, and then we can change the height of it. This also scales the object real quick. For most Inkscape objects, they're completely scalable, including the trees. And so you don't have that issue where you can't scale something to the height that you want. So now we have a nice sculpture in there and a nice section perspective kind of set up. Remember to LW and change invisible lines. But yeah, this is looking nice. Now that I've added a couple more assets to it, added some more, or the green trees, some color changes, adjusting the lighting and everything, we're starting to get a really nice image. Though as you can see, the shadows are casting it a bit too dark for me. As I turn them off, it gets a little bit lighter. So what you'll want to do is probably only have cast ambient and not shadows, but you can turn off that and it gets a little bit brighter. I like having it on, it shows a little bit more depth. But yeah, we have a really nice section perspective now, and all you had to do was add a couple more assets, some more detail, and you start to get really nice drawings coming out of Revit.